All right then. Coming to you from the mobile pod lab in the middle of nowhere. As you can see, I'm across the street from a cemetery. Interesting. Whoa. This is me, myself, and Flint. And I didn't do an episode yesterday. I had a little bit of an incident and I burned a very sensitive spot. And went home from work early yesterday and I was like, yeah, it's not a good day. Anyway, I'm still a little sore from the burn. Not as bad as I thought it'd be, but it's still a little sensitive. So something I've been kind of thinking about, and I guess it's something I've experienced myself. I've noticed it a lot, as I've grown up and everything. And I've noticed it in myself, I've noticed it in people I grew up with, spent time with, and I've noticed it in like the youth that have grown up in this time period. But something that I've come to notice that it seems like the older the kids get, in the transitioning from like the youth groups, the teen classes in church and stuff, and into the more adult roles and everything, that people are falling away from the church. The older they get, there's not that many people that. Seems like the people that are, late teens, early 20s are falling away. And something that I've kind of thought about and possible cause for that is, they get discouraged. They go from being gung-ho, here we go, let's get to do this, because there's so much that's focused towards the youth, like youth rallies, church camps, youth groups, things like that keep them active in the church. Then once they get out of the teenage stage, and into the adult roles, it seems like there's not that as much for them to do to keep them interested in the church. And I'm not saying that you gotta do all these big lavish events and stuff like that to keep young adults in the church. I'm just saying, maybe we should be focusing on, hey, this is changing for you. Let me help you out and be more of give them more guidance as they grow up, mature into these young adults and everything, and giving them, somebody that they can talk to, somebody they can spend time with if they have questions, answer their questions and stuff, because it seems like it gets hard, and when you get to that stage of life, if you don't, sorry guys, I don't know why it's not saying like it should, but when you get to that stage of life where you don't really know what to do next. You've been through all these things. You're really active, really going, spend time with the other teens and stuff. And once you graduate high school and go out to college and stuff like that, it's hard to find that group that you just click with. And that's where us as adults should be coming in and saying, hey, if you need anything, I'm here. Let me take you out to dinner. Let's get some of us together and go out to dinner. Let's, spend time together with these young people, getting them, keeping them in the Word, keeping them in the church, being able to connect with them one-on-one or, in a group setting. And I know sometimes it's a struggle to do that, and I know that, sometimes these kids are like, well, who's this old man trying to talk to me, but I can say when I was that age, I would have been open to having that person that I could connect with and talk to, because it seems like once I got out of the youth group stage and into the adult stage, I didn't have anybody that really said, hey, you can come over here, or hey, let's do something together. It's one of them things. I'm like, I went from having all these friends to really not having anybody that I can talk to about stuff. And some of this stuff, you're really like, I really don't want to talk to my family about this, because sometimes it might be a little embarrassing. Sometimes it's easier to talk to people that aren't family. So, anyway, and I know it's hard to do sometimes because we get discouraged, but I guess we need to work. That's something we need to work on, is our discouragement and trying to keep these people or young people in the church. A little bit about me and my what happened with me through the years. I've gotten back into the church. I grew up going to church, and I got to the point where the church I was going to did not have a very large youth group. There's basically 3 of us in this youth group at the church I was going to. Well, I had a bunch of friends that went to church just down the road. It's probably a 10-minute drive from the church I went to. So we had Sunday evening service at 5. Their church had Sunday evening service at 6. So, and it usually ran about an hour, between 45 minutes and an hour. So, I would go to church Sunday morning, then go again Sunday evening. Then I would hop in the vehicle. Before I got my vehicle, Mom would let me borrow hers, and my grandparents would take her home, and I'd take her car over to church where a lot of my friends were, which their youth group over there would average between 20 and 40 people, where the one I went to was about 3. So I had a lot more friends over there than I did in my own church. So I'd run over there and go to church with them on Sunday evening, then go back to my church Wednesday evening. So I spent a lot of time at church. Heck, I was going 3 times on Sunday alone. Then I would go to church camp, and I went several years to church camp, and that's where I was baptized. Well, when I was growing up in my church, I got baptized when I was younger, and it was basically just everybody else was doing it, so I decided I'd do it too. And it wasn't necessarily, it's not that I didn't believe what was taught, it was that I just did that because everybody else was doing it. So I got to go into this church camp and everything, and spend a lot more time at church and everything. Spend a lot more time around people that I was going to church with. And at this church camp, I think I was 17. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I really did not do that for the right reasons. I did not. I needed to change my ways, because I got to the point where if I wasn't around family, I would cuss and carry on. You know, I'd act worldly. Sorry, my words didn't want to come out. Then when I was at church or at home, I would act differently, and not so worldly. But I still held my values a lot when I was away from my family, away from church, because I had a reputation of, hey, if he said this, it has to be true, because he ain't gonna lie to you. And you know, I still had that influence or that reputation of not necessarily being a bad person, but being somebody that could be counted on. But I got to go into this church camp, and that one time, that one year, I was like, you know what? I'm just not doing things right. I need to change my ways, because I'm just not living right. And at the church camp I went to, we got baptized in a river, and I went down to the river, and I got baptized I was 22 or 23. I don't remember. I talked about my memory issues when previously, but in the previous episode, I talked about how I have issues remembering things. I was in my early 20s when I got married and started going to church with it's my now ex-wife, and got to go to church with her, and I mean, she went to Church of Christ like I did. I'm like, okay, that's cool, I'll go with you. And it ended up that they believed some stuff that I didn't believe. And the preacher there talked about a few churches that I grew up around. One of the churches he talked about was the church that I would go to on Sunday evening to spend time with my friends and stuff. And he was talking about them, and another church. I had quite a few friends that went to church there, and I got to the point where he was like, well, they're doing this and this and this wrong, and they're all going to hell over it. Every one of them going to hell because, like, they were eating in the building and stuff like that. They'd have a meal in the buildings, different things like that. And there's stuff that was just, basically, it was silly stuff. It was stuff that, you know, it really didn't make sense. And I walked out, and I looked at she was my wife at the time. I looked at her, I was like, I'm not coming back. I will not step foot back in this church. And I never went back to that church. And I struggled finding a place where I felt like I belonged. And for quite a while, I did not go. And then all of a sudden, I was on a search and rescue call, and I left the house, gave my wife a hug, kiss, and said, hey, I gotta go, we got a call. And we went on. She told me to be careful and everything, and I went on this search and rescue call. And on my way home, I tried several times to call her, and finally got a hold of her, and she goes, don't worry about coming back, I don't love you. And basically dropped me like a hot potato. And to this day, I don't understand why she was claiming I was cheating on her and all that, but I've got a feeling it was the other way around because I never cheated on her. But after that happened, I said, screw it, I'm not going. I blamed God for it. I was like, you let this happen. I don't understand why this happened. It's your fault. I didn't blame myself. I refuse to blame myself for it. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not saying that I was a great husband, but, you know, things happen. Well, I was out of the church for a while. I had gone from, I would say, 2010 was either 2011 or 2012. I moved down to Camden, and worked down there and stuff, and went to school for a while, then moved back up here and started going to church when I moved back up here. And I've said this a lot of times. It felt like God was calling me to come back because I had a verse that kept going through my mind: forsake not the assembly. And it got to the point where it went from once a month to all day, every day, until I started going back to church. And that verse, I'd say, changed my life, because I started back to church and I started changing my ways, and I've been going to church ever since. And there's some things that I do go to Church of Christ, but there's things that I do differ on them from. Like, I agree that I don't believe in having music in the church for worship, but if I'm out driving around or something, I don't mind listening to Christian music. But there's a lot of them that don't believe that. They believe that you can't even listen to it while you're out and about. So that's one thing. I know a lot of Christians, when you go, well, I believe in the supernatural, like ghosts and spirits and stuff like that, and they look at you like you've lost your mind. But I believe that they're real because I've seen them. I've had my experiences. But anyway, I've been back in the church since like 2011, 2012, and I've been trying to get better. I've had my times where I felt discouraged and overwhelmed and don't know what I'm doing. But I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to work on what I am and who I am. And that's part of the reason I started the show, is so I could work on myself and work on helping those who need help. So anyway, sorry I missed the episode yesterday. I hope y'all have a good rest of the day, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.